What is a scary or horrifying fact that shouldn't be true, but is? Some monks used to endure a spiritual practice whereby they eliminated all their body fat through diet and exercise, ate wood lacquer tea to kill off internal bacteria, then sealed themselves in a tomb holding a string attached to a bell. A year after the bell stopped ringing, the tomb was opened, and if the monk's body was found to be uncorrupted, they were revered as a saint. If not, they were buried. The process took years, and as they continued, the monks required more and more help from their brothers until they entered the tomb. And the whole time you'd hear bells ringing from the nearby tombs as the monks inside slowly wound down the last days of their lives, voluntarily poisoned, starved, and buried alive for a chance at sainthood. What if the bell never stopped ringing, and the other monks became terrified to reopen the tomb? There is more actual lemon juice and lemon-scented pledge spray than there is in country time lemonade. An unbelievable number of people who die of dehydration do so with a fair amount of fresh water in their possession. Yep, knew somebody that died this way due to horrible headaches caused by an undiagnosed brain tumor found during her autopsy that were so painful she threw up to the point of severe dehydration and died in her apartment right next to the sink. 60% of murders are unsolved here in Pakistan. We simply don't have the technology and training of the police officers in the West. Laughs in Brazilian, cries in South African, but you can't see the tears because the lights are out. In the NT Australia, I remember seeing a government warning that crocodiles inhabit the area. Among the few bullet points of advice on the sign, the last one read, "If they see you, it is already too late." The last one read, "If they see you, it is already too late." Really sweet of them to put this warning last. Snails have thousands of teeth, and apparently there's one who can grow their body back after decapitation. Do you mean one snail species who can do that? Or one particular snail who we still haven't managed to finish off? When you get a sunburn, your cells are dying to avoid becoming cancerous. All little buddies are taking one for the team. Good job, little dudes. You hurt like a bitch, but we love you. Edit. One of my top comments is now about little skin cells making a noble sacrifice. Honestly, can't complain. One of the experiments the Japanese did during World War II at Unit 731 was cutting off limbs of living, waking people without anesthesia and sewing those limbs onto other prisoners. They also infected male prisoners with various infectious diseases, then forced them at gunpoint to rape pregnant prisoners to see if the disease would transmit to the baby. They also put people in decompression chambers to see the effects on the human body. I believe they also cut off limbs of prisoners after giving them frostbite to see if they felt pain. Over 150 dead bodies of climbers are still on Mount Everest. Tourism at Mount Everest in itself is just ducked up on so many levels. Into Thin Air is a great read on the topic. Fatal insomnia. I learned it from this other post. I hope I get to sleep tonight. That reminds me about a guy who documented the whole process. Every time he tried to go to sleep, he would jolt himself awake involuntarily, and he would slowly go insane, making several videos mumbling crazy theories and stuff before eventually passing away. The idea of slowly going insane because of the lack of sleep is so ducking terrifying to me. That's been happening to me almost every night all of a sudden, so I take comfort in knowing when I lay down to go to sleep tonight and jolt myself back awake, this is what I will be thinking about. There are more Panda Express locations in the world than actual panda bears. This is outrageous. In Mississippi and some parts of Florida, there is a bacteria in the water at the coast that will literally eat your flesh off of you. Florida is much safer than Mississippi though, at least in that aspect. There is a mosquito in Florida that, when it bites you, can make your brains well inside your skull and can possibly kill you. Yeah, a summer camp I was in when I was 14 had to shut down because of this. If a person gets bitten by an animal who has rabies, he will continue to live on a normal life for 12 weeks, and after the symptoms develop, there is no way he's making out alive. You'll know you're gonna die. There was a post detailing every single aspect of being infected with rabies. I'll see if I can find it, but it's absolutely horrifying. The Amazon forest has a huge gap of virgin forest between Brazil and other countries. Places kilometers away from the nearest cities. The Brazilian Institute for Native Indians FUNAI has got agents overlooking tribes, and they take flights over the forest and always end up spotting huts, fire pits and bow and arrow armed men. There are plenty of unknown tribes hiding somewhere that huge forest. People never contacted by civilization. The fun fact is even the Institute agents have no idea of number, types and tribes they're inside. Can't track down, account, or detect their genealogy. Amazon forest is a complex and humid place. You can hide a family of elephants there inside, and you won't see it from the sky. Antibiotic resistance. In 2010 I got a MRSA infection. Spent 6 weeks in and out of hospital, ending in organ failure and sepsis, nearly died. 2 months later I was back in again. 2 months after that I was back again. On my third admittance they had run out of antibiotics to give me. The doctors researched for hours to find something they could try. Dug up an old antibiotic with terrible side effects and tried it. It didn't work. Luckily one of the ones I had previously tried and had a bad reaction to during sepsis. So probably not the medication they tried again, and it worked. But being deathly ill while the doctors have no idea what to give you is a scary place to be. Every single year, there are thousands of people in the US alone who disappear. Most of them show up again usually the next day, but sometimes a few days, a few weeks or even a few months later. However, out of these thousands of people, there are roughly 150 people every single year who disappear and simply never appear again. Nobody knows what has happened to those people. They might be dead. They might not be. We simply don't know. People forget sometimes just how big the world is. There are still a lot of uninhabited spaces where someone can die and simply not be discovered. Dylan Klebold, one of the killers of the Columbine massacre, attended the school's prom 3 nights before the shooting. When he got home he was talking to his mom and showed her the flask he'd brought to prom, explaining that they'd only drank a little bit. He told her, "I just wanted you to know you can trust me." It's so chilling that he could say that and less than 72 hours later participate in the killing of 13 other people and himself. What's even more frightening is that Columbine was really a failed bombing. They intended to blow up the entire school with propane bombs. Fortunately none of them detonated. You might feel like the healthiest person in the world and yet still randomly die in your sleep. Sudden arrhythmic death syndrome is just one example. There are tons of small obstructions and irregularities that your heart could be suffering from that go completely unnoticed by you, your friends, and your doctors. You might be at an increased risk of just passing on when you go to bed tonight, and no one would even suspect as much until you actually died. A lone pilot was flying in Australia in 1978. He reported to air traffic control that he was accompanied by an aircraft above him. When asked to identify the aircraft, he replied, "It isn't an aircraft." His plane disappeared and was never to be found again. Is there a name for this that I could look up and read more about? The sun will someday die. Can't wait. It's the trash newspaper. When you have scurvy, all your old scars and wounds open up due to the vitamin needed to maintain scar tissue. So for me, for example, I had my jaw dislocated and my gums cut open from check to remove wisdom teeth. If I got scurvy I would bleed uncontrollably from the inside of my mouth out. What would be your most horrifying scar? A gamma ray burst in space can release more energy than the sun in the whole lifetime produces link. So, nuclear weapons are just a tiny little toy compared to these GBRs. Even supernovas don't reach that much power. This is far beyond any scale. The good news is we are very unlikely to be in the path of such a burst, given how rare they are, and the fact that no supermassive stars are in our Bullseye path. Life is reasonably safe from these horrifying monsters. That being said, should the Earth be in the direct beaming path of GRB that was close to us, the effects would be devastating. The GRB would alter our atmosphere and strip away the ozone layer. This would leave us exposed to cosmic rays, and pretty much all life would be eradicated from the radiation. But again, we are extremely unlikely to see such an event. There is nothing big enough and close enough to us to be worried about. Still extremely fascinating. Whatever the shit is at the bottom of the ocean. Seriously, we know so little about this place and we've seen so much murderous shit down there that we've only scratched the surface on how much nightmare fuel is actually down there. On the plus side, most of the stuff living in deep ocean rarely exceeds the size of a grapefruit. Marital rape is still not a crime in 36 countries including India. Fun fact. India walked backwards, which means that before 2012, it was a crime, but they repealed it. You know how utterly batshit crazy Florida is. Actually, all states are that crazy. It's just that Florida has rather lax privacy laws regarding legal matters, so they report it. In the 5 years my family lived in Florida, the next door neighbor accidentally set himself on fire 3 times. Something is eating the Milky Way galaxy. No, it isn't the plot for a Star Trek episode. It's really happening. In 2009, researchers found a cluster of galaxies moving at an extraordinary speed towards a small patch of sky between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela. Some unknown force is tearing away chunks of the galaxy, and astronomers still have no clue what exactly is causing it. It's been named dark flow. There is something big out there, far bigger than anything in our known universe. Such a behemoth would impose a kind of tilt on the universe, causing matter to move in one particular direction, as observations of the dark flow suggest. Could be anything up to and including another universe. It's called the Great Attractor. Damn, is it single? Yes, but you have to compete with the entire universe. Good luck. I don't know how horrifying this might be, but if you get water between your contact lens and your eye and don't clean it for a long period of time, there's a chance some form of bacteria can get into your eye and will eat away your vision until it's gone. Apparently doctors won't know if it's there until it's too late as well. Always use solution, folks. 1. If you are a healthy 20-year-old, you have around multiply 2860 weeks before you die. Just 2860 Sundays. To the average person will be less successful than they think. 3. About multiply 153,000 people die on your birthday. 4. Seals have been known to rape penguins. 5. If you took all of the world's spiders and let them out in the Netherlands, they would consume the country's population in 3 days. 6. 1 in 50 of us is walking around with a brain aneurysm. It just hasn't ruptured. 7. The Colombian serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez, who is known as the Monster of the Andes, raped and murdered over 300 girls from Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. However, after he was caught and imprisoned for 18 years, he was put in a psychiatric hospital. There he was reviewed, declared to be sane, and was set free, in spite of his blatant avowal that he fully intends to kill again. Ever since his release in Multiply 1998, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. Pedro is dead. That guy was a ducking piece of trash with bounties on his head from the father of one of the daughters he murdered. He once visited his poor mother and sold her only bed for cash. Yeah, I guarantee he was treated to some vigilante justice. You could die at any moment without any notice, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Edit guys, I appreciate the upvotes, but some of y'all really need therapy. I wish you the best, but please go talk to someone. As a severe brain injury survivor, I can testify to this. This is very true. You could simply drop dead at any moment with no prior indication. There is nothing you can do about it but accept it. Death is inevitable, and accepting that it can happen at any time is a solid step towards happiness. I've had around a dozen near-death experiences. 3 drownings, 3 head-on collisions, 3 other auto incidents, heart surgery, cancer, meningitis, and for that wonderful privilege each night I enjoy a glass of wine, finger of bourbon. Cause it still is scary, mind-blowing, and an existential trip that leads to a blending of science and theology. How dark the BTS of The Wizard of Oz is. In Judy Garland's Dorothy own words, they had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pep-up pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us cold with sleeping pills, Mickey sprawled out on one bed and me on another. Then after 4 hours they'd wake us up and give us the pep-up pills again. so we could work another 72 hours in a row. Half of the time we were hanging from the ceiling. But it became a way of life for us. The troposphere is the layer closest to Earth's surface. It is 4 to 12 miles 7 to 20 km thick and contains half of Earth's atmosphere. Link. That is where our oxygen is. That is where we live. It is like we live in an aquarium. But we keep shitting in it all the time and there is no one to clean the filters. Being gay is illegal in 69 countries. In 7 of those countries homosexuality is punishable by death. I remember reading the front page of a newspaper my dad had just put down. There was this word I didn't understand. The headline was describing the corporal punishment a couple of men were to be sentenced to for an act they'd committed. My dad didn't want to explain what the word meant, while my mum really struggled to describe the act they'd been accused of. Ultimately, it just sounded like these men were cuddling in a disgusting way. These men were about to receive corporal punishment for something, which I understood, was consensual and which they did in private. Did they harm each other? Did they hurt anyone? I vividly remember my confusion and my young brain could not comprehend the logic behind the sentencing.